Hello, Godot lovers. This is Wizard of West March with another tutorial about the Godot 4 engine, this time about the input functions. So underbar input, underbar unhandled key input, and underbar GUI input in particular. This will give you an idea of how these functions interact, how they interact with stuff like process, and what it all means. So let's start with the basics. I'm going to run this. I'm going to push the up key. You'll see three messages. I got an input in 2, I got it in 1, and I got it in underbar process. So it was seen by three different things. Now, the first important detail, I'm going to swap 2 and 1. And now when I run it and press up, you notice I only get 2 messages. Why? So this gets into a function that is very important, this get viewport set input as handled. When you call this in a function like input, unhandled input, etc., because that is only one key press, mouse movement, whatever, it knows which one you're talking about, and it will no longer call the other input functions with this specific input action. This makes sure that you can control how many things get an item. But the important detail is, even at the same level, they will, once you have removed it from the stream, even stuff at, say, underbar input is still not going to get called. So if you're going to call it, you either need to structure your code so that the primary owner that can remove it is calling it from a higher tier than everything after, or you have to control your tree structure. The first way is much easier. So I would recommend using the layering. And the order of these events is input, key unhandled, and then unhandled. And I can show that. Let's go ahead and refresh it. When I press enter, you'll notice it's only 1 and it's key unhandled. And when you look at the code, you will notice I have it here, but I also have except here. And yet, you only see the 1. So that means you know that unhandled key input comes before unhandled input. That is the order. And so, if you want to do a 3-layer catch, one layer is owned by one thing, the second layer of key unhandled is owned by a second thing, and then if everything else that needs to catch it and shouldn't do any blocking, just put those in unhandled input, you can, and that will let you control all of that. So, just keep that in mind when you're doing anything with inputs. While we're here, let's look at auto loads. So you will notice I have auto load 1, auto load 2. And they have the set input as handled, and they're doing off of left. So whenever I do this, only auto load 2 triggers. And this goes, actually here, let me reload it because it'll be more obvious. Notice the auto loads show up 1, then 2. And because the tree works bottom up, then 2 wins. And for reference, when you load the project and look in auto loads, so the order they are loaded into the tree is the exact same order that they show up here in the auto load. So keep this in mind that the top item is going to lose. Okay, so there's that, and handle. So that's that's input, key input, unhandled input, plus process, which always gets everything, no matter if you do get viewport or set input as handled or not. All right, so now let's unhide our 2 rectangles. So you'll notice rectangle 2 is white, rectangle 1 is red, and it's on top. And both of them have filter set to pass. And they are both looking for the mouse motion detected, and you'll notice, so white color on rec 2, and let's go ahead and comment this out just to show what's going on. So white rect on 2 and red color on 1. So, all right, we start it. You'll notice I'm only getting white color rec 2. When I swipe in the part that's only the red, I get 1. And that's even with pass and it not being told to eat the inputs. Why? This is the other big thing I learned when somebody suggested I do this tutorial and I started doing research. For pass to work, there has to be a parent-child relationship. So now, after I've made color rec 2, aka the white one, a child, notice it is showing both white and red 2 and 1. So that is because once it's a child, pass works. But if I turn on get viewport set input as handled, it goes back to only showing the white color rect 2. Because of the fact that it eats mouse inputs as well. Any input that is being processed when you call get viewport set input as handled gets eaten. And it just eaten's overstating it. It is no longer fed into any of the input functions. Input, unhandled key input, if it's a key, which mice motions aren't, unhandled input, and GUI. I believe I said this before, but I will reiterate, there is a graphic in the Godot documentation that shows the order of events. I will link that in the description, and that will help you remember, if you can't, where this stuff goes. And so there are different benefits to this. If you want to sometimes only get certain things to it, you can, in those situations, call the set input as handled. If you want to limit function calls because you're tight on performance, so you make sure that, like, let's say your player character is the only thing that should care about the mouse button 1, then you can eat that input so nobody else sees it, and then it's not going to get handled. Mind you, you need to be careful about this, because if you're eating it at the wrong times, you might be eating mouse inputs for things like the GUI. So make sure that you know what you're doing when you're handling these inputs, so that you don't create confusing situations for yourself. The number of times people have gotten confused and asked questions in the Discord about why am I not seeing these inputs is a lot. So keep all these different things in mind. Hopefully it makes it easier for you using input functions, and it lets you do what you want. And I believe that is all for today. So take care, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.